committee. And a special thank you to the Houston in Action and Arts to Action for supporting this project as a part of the H-Town Votes initiative. So what is moments? What is interference? I'll let Kemi talk a little bit about that.
Yes, hi everyone. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what this project is, Moments is a year-long project that really focuses on using creatives of color to reflect on the narratives of people of color, and interference is one of our first pieces. This was a project that came out of a need to show creatives how much they are valued in the industry, because oftentimes we are not, in the way that we're dealt with in business, or just in the way our art is kind of handled sometimes. And oftentimes when you just get into the industry, it can be very difficult to stand for yourself and to see the value in what you bring as an artist or as a creative, when nobody's willing to kind of, you know, support that. And so the Moments Project is definitely one. It was a project that was built out of a need to showcase the value of artists, of local artists, to kind of encourage artists in a way where they can stand for their art, and also to show others what it feels like when, you know, clients and people who are interested in commissioning art actually support their artists in doing so. The second big aspect of Moments, it's a part of FEM, through the inner eye of a westernized African girl, which is taking a deep dive into the stories of people of color, specifically those who are Black, female, and live, are influenced by multiple cultures, i.e., they have the immigrant experience of being in one country and moving into another, or they are actually of multiple cultures. And how does that affect their perspectives on life in different environments, at work, at school, within, you know, around certain groups of people? How do they see the world? How do they experience the world? And what kind of perspective do they have, and do they bring to the table in terms of us as a society? So moving into the next slide of interference. Interference is our first visual. It's talking about the relationship between African Americans and Black Americans. And we're talking about the history of the tension between both groups, where we are now, why there was tension in the first place, how we see each other, the stereotypes and the perspectives that we see each other, and also the issues that affect both communities here in the US and abroad when we're thinking about countries of color, so to say. So that's kind of a breakdown of interference. We're gonna get back into, you guys are gonna have the opportunity to see interference today, and to bring your own perspective and your own thoughts from your own spheres of influence. But we're going to go into the next aspect, which is our rules of engagement for this panel. We understand that as part of this project, we actually took stories from a number of random, we don't know their names, we don't know where they are in life. All we know is that we had a bunch of people from the community share their stories about living as growing up as an African immigrant or a Black American. And we also understand that some of these stories come with a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and a lot of passion when discussing some of the topics that we're gonna go discuss today. And so one of our biggest things is that we ask that everyone be extremely respectful of of everyone's opinions, thoughts, and experiences. And then also we want to make a disclaimer that this project is nonpartisan. And so any of the opinions or thoughts or perspectives you see here do not actually necessarily reflect OGCreatives or Interference or the Moments Project. Specifically, this is just a platform for people to kind of share their opinions and for us to learn and hear each other out as we're talking about these topics. So I'm going to pass it back to Kelechi, and he's going to, I guess, portray is not the word, the right word, but he's going to present our 4 panelists for you today.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I know there's a little misspeaking. The project is specifically between the African immigrant community and the African American community. Yeah, so first we have on Rain Eatmon as one of our panelists. We also have Jessyka Linton, Terrance Koontz, and Nneka Achapu. And I'll give you guys each a quick moment to introduce yourselves and what you do, starting with Rain.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again for allowing me the opportunity to participate in this panel. My name is Rain Eatmon. I am currently the director of the Police Accountability Project within Houston Justice. And all that really encompasses is that I am the representative for Houston Justice regarding any movements in the city of Houston for police accountability initiatives and police reform initiatives that stretches as far as a current coalition we just joined to create an amendment to the city charter to create more level playing field with all the council members and who can put agendas on the can put items on the agenda, but that's a long spill, to simply helping out with creating a petition and a report that really shows the systemic issues regarding the police relationship in Houston versus the people of color that live in the city of Houston. A lot of my background is in community engagement and community organizing. I've done everything from hosting and producing music festivals in the Acres Homes community to advocating for healthier food spaces in the community to working on projects with the city with their Complete Communities program and things of that nature. So I'm grateful that I was asked to participate in this this discourse, and I hope that I am able to bring something to the table.
Thank you, Rain. Next we have Jessyka Linton.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jessyka. I am a relatively new lawyer. I graduated from Baylor in 2019. I've been working with Reed Smith, a firm. Our Houston office is in downtown. I've been working with them since I graduated. I feel similarly. I'm so excited about the panelists. I'm hopeful that I have something meaningful to contribute. But I can't wait to hear today's discussion.
Next, we have Mr. Terrance Koontz.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrance Koontz. I go by TK. I'm the statewide training coordinator for the Texas Organizing Project, and we organize in Black and Latino communities around issues such as housing, immigration, healthcare, and criminal justice reform. And we do issue-based campaigns year-round, and I'm an African-American, so hopefully I have something to contribute to this conversation as well.
And lastly, Nneka Achapu.
Greetings, everyone. I am so glad for you guys having invited me to this panel, and I am excited to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here. My name is Nneka Achapu. I am a Nigerian American. I am based here in Houston, Texas. And I have been working in the community for quite some time. And I'm actually very happy to be here with some of my colleagues. Shout out to Terrance, whom I've worked with on campaigns. I'm very glad to see him here. And I've worked in the immigrant rights movement at the ACLU of Texas, and then right now at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, which is a national social justice organization that focuses on social justice issues, which the organization was founded by Opal Omedi, who is also the founder of Black Lives Matter. And I have also founded an organization called the African Public Affairs Committee that seeks to create empowerment for the African diaspora. And I mentioned the African diaspora because a lot of folks forget that we are all part of the African diaspora. And so I'm very glad for Kemi and Kelechi to organize this event and to offer some perspective.
And so I guess the next people to introduce are myself and Kemi, and I'll let Kemi go first.
All right, so hi everyone again. My name is Kemi. I go by Kemi OG. I am a dance artist. I specialize in Afro dance history and culture. I've been training and choreographing for about 8 years. I started in high school and then went on to college, and from there started doing a lot of more creative pieces that really reflected the emotional state of people of color, starting, with myself. Been doing a lot of creative projects, do a lot of teaching, but recently, in light of everything that's been happening in our world, I felt like it was very important for us to shine a light on what we truly feel and what we truly go through. Because I feel like we say Black Lives Matter and people take it as a statement or a marketing tactic, and it's starting to lose its meaning. And so projects like this are a way to kind of shed light onto what is actually happening with us and seeing kind of the real the real experiences, like bringing light back to the real experiences of what it feels like to be Black in this country. So I'm really, really excited for this project. It's been a long time coming, and I'm really excited to have this conversation where we really bring the focus back onto what's important, which is the fact that Black lives and Black stories really, really do matter. And we have the ability we have an influence, and we need to be very cognizant of our influence in order for us to make change.
My name is Kelechi Basil. I helped Kemi in creating this project. I'm currently a grad student, and just a little bit about our background. We went to undergrad together, and like projects like these are things that we would discuss. We were both on our undergrad institution's African dance team, and so like in creating choreos, we would talk about concepts like these. And like Kemi said, it's been a long time coming that we've discussed so many different ideas, and we're just wanting to find a way to use dance to impact our society and speak to the issues at hand. And so, yeah, it's been a long time coming, and we're really excited to roll out this project, and hopefully you guys stay along for the ride as we show you guys some more. So moving on to the next thing, like we said earlier, the community panel is tied to the visual, which premiered last weekend. So we're just gonna give about 10 minutes for everybody to go and watch the visual so that we can start the discussion from there. We're going to put the link in the chat box for everybody to go and watch it, and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. Yep. All right, everyone, welcome back. We gave you guys about 10 minutes, to watch it twice, get your thoughts aligned, and I guess we're gonna open it up to the panel. Before we start that, we already see some comments going in the chat, and we really appreciate that, you guys. We want you guys to participate in the conversation through the chat as well. Right now, we're doing our panelist session, but afterwards, remember, there will be the Q&A, so continue to send Kemi and I your questions so we can have those for the panelists at the end. But yeah, I guess our first question to the panelists is, what were your thoughts? What were some things that stood out to you? What were some things that maybe you identified with very strongly? Yeah.
Let's start with Terrance, TK.
Oh, cool. I was trying to be a gentleman though, but all right. No, I immediately, as soon as I saw the two little girls on opposite sides of the mirror, I kind of had a sense of what I thought it was. Shouts out to you for putting that together. That was beautiful. It was powerful. It resonated with me as an African American. I think that it kind of told a story of our experience as we come up, especially as children. We have these negative associations with each other's communities as Black people, which transcend beyond our age, and then we become adults, and that's this disconnect overall. And at the end of the day, we all just Black people. So I appreciate it. I just shared it with my coworker. As soon as I finished, I emailed it to my homegirl. So it was dope.
All right, next, Nneka.
Well, I thank you for this work. I really saw myself as a recent immigrant in the two girls kind of comparing each other and getting to learn about each other, and then growing up and having a whole lot of misconceptions. I think it's great to be able to talk about this, especially in a moment where we feel like the movement for Black lives has gone global. Mm-hmm. We see the solidarity that we've received as Nigerians with the NSARS protest, and what has been going on with police brutality in general all over the world. And that kind of encourages me that there is going to be a better dialogue in the future about, the African diaspora, what it means to be Black, what it means to be a Black immigrant. So I'm really grateful for you guys' work in showcasing and highlighting these very important things.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Next, we're gonna go to Rain.
Well, I got the link last night, and I just kind of rewatched it just to kind of get all of the Easter eggs, because you can really tell this visual was like really thought out thoroughly to get the messaging across, to get the visual across. And I applaud you guys for your work in that, because it takes a painstakingly long amount of time to just get a shot or an angle right, but to go through the painstaking moment of making sure the angles are right, making sure the subliminal messages are right, making sure that all of the hidden nuances in the movie comes across so powerfully. Kudos to you guys with that. My thoughts were, I guess I can kind of echo everything everybody else has said. I resonated with both of the little girls because unfortunately, I grew up in an era, well, I'm pretty sure we all grew up in an era where it was very popular to demonize people of color, and specifically Black people, where on the news, it was much easier for you to talk about the super predator rather than what was going on in your local Boys and Girls Club and things of that nature. So to see that be visualized in such a very poignant way, it just kind of reawakened some of those past issues I had to contend with myself as a young Black girl, because I due to the influences of media, it was very easy for me to try to separate myself from my own culture because, oh, well, all they show on TV are Black people going to jail or people not being good if their skin is as dark as mine. So I'm just going to disassociate myself, and I can get into that a little bit later. But it speaks to how powerful media can be and how there is a desperate need for Black people to create their own narrative in the media to ensure that future generations don't have to contend with losing their identity through the gaze of other people telling our story for ourselves. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Lastly, Miss Jessyka?
Yeah, I watched Interference for the first time with my younger sister, maybe 2 days ago, yesterday. And at like, I didn't give her any preface. I didn't tell her what it was about. Afterwards, I asked her what she thought, and she had a lot of the same comments that all of us have expressed so far. And I think that just shows that, Rain, I think you're right. Like, this generation is still contending with things that generations past have had to, and that feels a little unfair, right? Like, at what point do we get to tell our own story, and at what point does the Black experience become one that Black people tell? Like, at what point do I know who my African brothers and sisters are because they've told me who they are? Mm-hmm. So what struck me most the first time I watched it was how long it took me to figure out who was supposed to be African and who was supposed to be a Black American. It took me a while, and my sister caught on to it a lot faster. But even like, it was almost like a slap in the face. Like, Jessyka, why do you think, like duh, that's the whole point. So I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what else we get into today.
Ooh, thank you. I guess hearing you guys talk, that brings into perspective the next question, which is, what are some ways that you, I guess, growing up felt as the other, right, from the opposite community, right? So as a Black American growing up, how did you feel as an other from the African community? And as an African immigrant or first generation, you know, growing up, how did you feel as an other from the other community, right? Because we want to kind of highlight in bringing together both sides and creating unity, we also need to acknowledge that there have been instances where, you know, growing up, we have kind of been against each other at times, you know. So what were some instances, personal anecdotes that you might have? And I guess we can start off with Ms. Rain.
Well, thank you. I want to say that I have been, and this is kind of a diversion, but it falls in the same ballpark. So please give me grace on this one. I have been in the blessed position to not really feel any animosity from anybody who was an African immigrant growing up. And I say that as a blessing and as a curse, because unfortunately, I wasn't exposed to any African immigrants until I went to TSU. and that was later in my collegiate career. I want to say closer to 2014, but growing up, a lot of the animosity that I felt as a Black girl was from my own Black community, simply because we have those stereotypes where certain things are Black, and if you don't do that, then you're not Black. You're not able to claim your own identity or lack thereof because you don't curse, you don't look like the Black girls on the TV, you don't act like the Black girls on the TV. And so growing up, my mother and my family made it a point to try to give me the best education and the best exposure they could outside of the neighborhood that I grew up in, Acres Homes, which is notoriously a neighborhood. I will just leave it at that. But one of the things that I grew up always questioning was my identity, because I would go to piano lessons or I would go to different activities outside of my neighborhood, try to bring it back to my neighborhood, and all of a sudden I was no longer from Acres Homes. I was no longer Black because I said 4-4, not 4-4. if everybody kind of understands that here. And so one of the things that was really difficult for me growing up was that it was very easy for me to detach myself from being Black altogether, because it was so early on in my childhood established that I wasn't Black, because I didn't do what we saw in the video. I didn't have the short clothes or the long nails, or I didn't do the Shanae twist with the neck or anything like that. I didn't do the stereotypical Black thing. And because I didn't fall in line with the stereotypical Black thing, I was not considered Black. And so with that being said, I didn't really get to understand or love my real Black self until I was surrounded by other Black people and by other African immigrants through Texas Southern. And that was where I really began to understand my heritage and understand the beauty of the Black culture overall, because it was such a conducive environment to love yourself, because all you saw was yourself in its truest form. And that's the background for me. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's an unfortunate or fortunate, but I can't really speak to the backlash from African immigrants, but I can definitely say in the Black community, there is a tendency to down ourselves, especially at a younger age, because we don't fit stereotypical media-driven Black person mold. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for the response. And next we'll go to Nneka.
Okay. I guess it's because I can't see myself and I only see you, so I thought that I was still off video. I have too many Zoom calls this week, but as far as my impression, I have to say that even within my own community as a Nigerian, I have faced this question, are you Nigerian? Simply because I grew up in Europe and I've not spent much time in Nigeria. So we always have that question. And I think we ask that question because we're not aware that Black people are everywhere. We only think as Black people either being here in the United, I'm thinking of, Nneka in high school and how her high school peers used to think, right? Oh, you're from Italy? There's other Black people in Italy? Oh, that's rare. And why is it that you have an accent? And why do you move with your hands like this? Like, I think it's all about education and knowing and being aware that there's a whole world outside of this country. And there are other people from other Black realities. When we talk about, for example, Black immigrants, it's not just people from Africa. We have Afro-Latinos, we have Caribbean folks. So I think part of the misconception that we have issues between, Black people and African people or Jamaican people, I think it's just a matter of knowing about each other. And that's what's lacking. We don't have enough information. We don't know. We are living based on misconceptions, right? People will assume as Nigerians that all African Americans are lazy, right? We always hear that from our parents, or at least I've heard it when I was coming to the United States, that this is the image, but that's not true. Mm-hmm. As everywhere else, Black people are the most hardworking people, but that is the misconception, and that's what's perpetrated to other people when we talk about Black folks. Same thing with Black people knowing about Africans, right? The assumption is, oh, African booty scratcher, or, I have heard, I've been called an Oreo, for example, many times. Or what other thing that I can mention here that kind of makes you understand that if we all took the time to learn about each other, we would not be basing our knowledge about each other on the misconceptions that are surrounding us everywhere. And for that, I want to encourage people to step outside the comfort zone. get to know other people, travel. There are organizations that put together trade missions to other countries. I mean, I know it's coronavirus time, but pre-coronavirus, a lot of people were going for the year of return in Ghana. Why? It came as a wanting to know the heritage, what happened. So I think the more knowledge we have about each other, the more programs like this we keep on putting, the more exposure to the greater community that, hey, we need to have this dialogue that at the end of the day, we are all experiencing Blackness in the same way. If I get stopped by the cop, it really doesn't matter if I'm coming from Nigeria. They're gonna stop me anyways, all right? So that realization that if we come together as Black people and learn more about each other, I think we could do, a whole lot. We could be a very powerful voting bloc, but I'm not even gonna talk about that right now because I wanna give space to other folks.
Ms. Jessyka and TK, you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, so small story. I was in maybe 7th or 8th grade, and one of my dearest friends was also Black, I grew up in Rancho Cucamonga, California, which 1 is a rare place, and 2 feels very white, even though it's a rather diverse community. Neither here nor there, okay. So yeah, one of my closer friends at the time was also Black. We're laughing on the bus, we're having a good time. And at some point during the conversation, I said something about us both being Black, and she stopped dead in the conversation and said, "No, you're Black, I'm African-American." And I thought she was joking. I was like, "What's the difference?" And she said, "I know where I come from, you don't." And it felt like this slap to the face. In part, that's real, right? That is a significant difference in our communities. But 2, I think more to Nneka's point, yeah, but girl, that is a distinction that is one amongst us only, right? And can truly only be can either be divisive if we choose that, or it can be one's weakness is the other's strength, right? We make each other stronger together. Because at the end of the day, I agree with Nneka, I've chosen that I am Jessyka, I am me, but in dual consciousness, I recognize that anyone else, my law degree means nothing if a cop sees me, right? All these accomplishments. At the end of the day, I am a Black female. Yeah, I think that was the question. What was our childhood experience with recognizing these differences?
And TK?
Yeah, I couldn't. I don't necessarily recall any kind of confrontation or tension from, I guess, the African community growing up. I do remember having a feeling of I don't want to identify or be associated with African. I remember one time when I was maybe in high school, someone told me that I looked like an African. And at the time, due to ignorance and self-hate and all those things, I took offense to it. But as I've gotten older, I long to know where my ancestors come from, because I think at the end of the day, we are all of African descent or Pangean descent or whatever came before European colonization. At the end of the day, I'm sure we could trace our lineage. If we go back further enough, we come from this place. And once I started to acknowledge and embrace that, my life changed. I teach my son about his Blackness as an entirety, the overall community that he comes from, and to again, I think that the idea is to cause us to just hate anything Black. So if you look at those 2 screens that were in the video, on one screen there was an image of African Black people, on the other screen there was an image of African Americans, but it was all detestable deplorable conditions. It was none of the light that comes from either one of those communities, because African Americans have a culture, a positive culture too, just like Africans and all other Black people throughout the world. So I think that once I realized who was controlling the media, who was influencing my mind, who was dropping these seeds inside of me, I stopped. I smashed the TV, like they did, metaphorically speaking, like they did. I'm going to turn this off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a very big aspect of what we were trying to portray, you know, that like a lot of these stereotypes, they come from the media. And like you guys have said, you know, that these are the things that we grew up seeing. These are the things that we grew up hearing. And that's the things that we're ingrained with. I think Rain.
Yes, I actually just wanted to add something to Ms. Achapu's point, where we have to kind of get ourselves familiar with all the different realities of Black lives. And I know that there are several power move makers on this call right now who do have influence, or you are gaining influence in your respective areas. And as a past educator, I can definitely say reinforcing these new norms into our education system would be a breath of fresh air, because we are all so tired of the same Black History Month lesson of Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Thurgood Marshall, George Washington Carver, and Miss Robinson, the first African-American woman who went to space. We're tired of that because our culture is more than that. Our realities are far beyond that. We are not a monolith, not in the African immigrants, nor in the Black community. And so I think another way to kind of juice that, since we are in this era where everybody has the entire world at the touch of their fingertips, where we do have access to more information than what our grandparents have, we as the upcoming generation who are going to set the rules need to demand more robust African American studies. We need to demand more robust curriculum surrounding engaging the Black experience as a whole, rather than, and I'm not talking on a simple, oh, I'm gonna homeschool my kid with different flashcards and kind of incorporate them on this, that, and third. No, I'm talking about actually demanding from our school boards, from our school districts, to integrate programs that actually talk about the real life African American and African immigrant experience, because it should not be a case where we are constantly force fed the same history over and over again, but we know through research and through exposure, these things are lies. These histories that we have been given, these media images and visuals that we have been fed, they are lies at the end of the day. And it's up to us, now that we have these conversations, and I'm going to get off my soapbox in a minute, but we are a group of doers. This is a generation that actually has the tools, has the access, and has the resources and the connections necessary to change the narrative moving forward. And that scares a lot of people in power. But in order to ensure that we don't repeat history, in order to ensure that we are fighting to have our stories heard, we need to control the narrative. And how do we do that? We do that by having a relationship with our school board directors. We do that by making sure our representatives know what we want and how we need to be represented. And if they're not listening to us, we need to get them out to ensure that the people we want to represent us actually go forth and represent us. Be the change that we need to see, fight for the change that we want to see. And that requires us staying engaged beyond this moment. It's beautiful to have a talk. It's beautiful to have a panel. But everybody on this call needs to make a resolution within themselves to find a way to be active beyond this talk. And doing so through staying engaged with your school body, suggesting new curriculum to your state representative, fighting for change, and making your voice heard through voting, which I don't want to put the horse before the cart, but you have to be active and you have to fight and push for these narratives, because passively doing it in your own home is only going to do so much. And in having these communications and having these conversations, we need to stop having the conversation and just feel good that we acknowledge the elephant in the room. Now it's time to get the elephant out. And that, I'm gonna say that and mute myself now.
Yeah, I think what you said is a great springboard into the next topic. You know, like in the future, in the long run, the goal is to integrate these things into our community, you know, into our learning, into our education systems, into our media. But just amongst ourselves right now, as we're having this discussion, I know we assembled you guys as panelists because of the wealth of information that you guys bring from your different perspectives and your different works in the communities. So we just want to give you guys this moment to speak towards what are the big issues within your communities, within the Black community, that you are currently passionate about, that you are currently working on and tackling. And I'll go with, I see Nneka first.
Thank you, Kelechi. Well, right now, I think for the Black immigrant community, one of the issues that is very, very concerning is the deportations. We are seeing a large amount of deportations of African immigrants, specifically from Cameroon, Congo, Eritrea, Ethiopia. We are seeing this on a daily basis, and it's happening in batches of hundreds. And this was not happening before. It's been happening this last 4 years, and it's been intensified in the last couple of months. Same thing with deportations of Haitians. So we're seeing that a lot of Africans that are fleeing from Cameroon, because there's an Anglophone crisis right now occurring over there, where a lot of people are dying. People are leaving Cameroon and trekking all the way from Africa, making the trip 14 countries all the way to ask for asylum at the port of entry in Mexico. Asking for asylum is a legal process. The person in charge right now is asking people to stay in Mexico unwarranted, in danger, after having fled 14 countries to get here and legally request for asylum. That is the fight that we're in, at least as Black immigrants right now. The second fight that we're having is voter suppression. We are in the midst of an election season. We are 6 days ahead of elections, and you're seeing that people are responding and getting in line to cast their vote. Voter suppression is not just all of these other things that they're making, but just the fact that we have to wait in line hours and hours on end. That is a way that some people are trying to deter people from voting. Keeping only one ballot box in Harris County is voter suppression. So we are seeing a whole host of issues where our community needs our voices. And when I say our voices, when I say that we need to speak up, I don't only mean in the sense of going out there and marching in the streets. There are opportunities to unseat some of the folks that are making these laws. The only way we can actually affect policy is if we are involved in the policymaking process. And the only way we can do that is if we educate ourselves about the importance of being part of the political process. And I just want to say, it doesn't only have to occur in the presidential elections. There are elections all the time. School board, tax assessor, constable, sheriff, judge. Those are all parts of the moving pieces, people that are making decisions for our own without our own input. And we can't allow that. We can't continue that. And I want to reach out to all people that are interested in moving beyond talking and actually acting. This NSARS thing that is going on, it's police brutality. It's happening in Nigeria just like it's happening here in the US. We need to know who is responsible. And the only way is if we hold people accountable. We hold them accountable by holding them to what we need to know what is going on. So I just welcome folks to not only talk and discuss. It's all beautiful, but there's other ways to get your voices heard. And that is through being participant, to being part of the process, because someone is at the table making decisions that affect you and you have no say in what they are deciding. So it's either for us, by us, not for other people to decide what our future is going to be like. Thank you.
Thank you, Nneka. And I think we can move to Jessyka. What are some major issues within the community that you are currently active in, that you're currently passionate about?
Yeah, so I think when I think about my community, in addition to the Black American community, I also think about the legal community. And yeah, it's tough out here, right? Like it's tough to, okay, I don't know. So little history lesson. In any huge movement in American history, lawyers have been this like silent undercurrent force, right? Like we have been gifted with the privilege of the tools that we have, and truly laws should be for everyone, but not everyone has a law degree, right? So it is, I think right now the legal community is in one, watching and waiting, like what is this election doing? What does voter suppression look like in 2020? How can lawyers prevent voter suppression? And when it undoubtedly occurs, what are our next steps? So I know partners in my law firm are already looking towards what do we do the second this election is over? Like what lawsuits need to be filed? Where do they need to be filed? And I think part of a lawyer's job is always looking 10 steps ahead, right? Like not only what about November 3rd, but what about December? And what about 4 years from now? Like there are going to be, this is not the last election. So how is what is happening in this moment, how is that going to shape not just Texas, not just Harris County, but what is happening nationally and internationally, right? So that's pretty heavy on the minds of the legal community.
TK, what are your thoughts?
There are countless issues, like a never-ending list. Right now, I've primarily been working on reform. And to Ms. Jessica's point, whether you're an attorney, a doctor, a lawyer, a peasant, you're Black, and when you have interactions with the police, the criminal legal system, many times they just acknowledge you primarily as Black. I actually have a felony and a misdemeanor myself from one incident with the criminal legal system. And so I think that that's a good starting place in our community, because so many of our community folks are affected by the criminal justice system at like early ages. You got kids in school being arrested, getting these backgrounds that follow them for the rest of their life, and they, it just trickles down. I think beyond like just issues, because when I think of issues, I think about policies and all those kind of things. I think that our communities are afflicted with poverty, and many times it's hard to introduce or move people to be mobilized when the day-to-day needs that they have are not being met. There's definitely an opportunity to figure out how do we have more sustainable food in our communities? How do we get grocery stores? Like there are things that how do we get more jobs in our communities? Those things need to be addressed as a first step before we can even start organizing, because speaking as a person who moved to organizing from a volunteer position, it's much easier to organize when my bills are paid than it was when I was hungry. I still did it, but my concentration was not what it is now. So I think that, getting people services that they need, childcare, jobs, those are the type of things that I would start with. School to prison pipeline, yeah.
Cool. I think that brings us into like our next discussion question. What are some of the ways, I know that the interference project specifically, our goal is to encourage civic participation, encourage us going out there. And that is something that Rain and Nneka, Jessyka, Terrance, you guys have all touched on. We just wanted to delve deeper into that and discuss more ways that people can tangibly get active in their communities. I know, Rain, you mentioned that it's knowing the different the people within the school systems that are creating the curriculums. I know Nneka mentioned that there's more than just the presidential election. You know, there's your local election, there's your state election, there's your county election. What are other ways that we as the Black community can become more involved in our governance? And yeah, Rain, feel free. Yeah.
Well, the one thing I wanted to kind of make a note of is that for everybody who's in the chat or everybody who's in the Zoom call, I put a link in the chat called runforsomething.net. And that is your first way of getting engaged if you feel as if you don't have proper representation and you feel as if you need to run for office or you have the capacity to do so. But before you do that, one thing I would highly suggest anybody on here do is that you need to get connected to the grassroots level. You need to understand exactly what your community specifically needs before you start running for anything on that level, to ensure that you're not just running for the sake of running or running because of your own perspective of what's going on. When you are exposed to the voices of others and when you are actually working in the trenches with others, you are better prepared to understand the narrative and the needs of those around you versus what you feel like you got on your own because you attended 2 or 3 seminars here or there. With that being said, the way we engage as a community is that we, the people who are showing initiative, need to engage those who aren't necessarily coming to the table. And like TK said earlier, I'm not about to go to a 2.5-hour symposium on the diaspora of the Black people if I know good and well my child is about to come home from online learning and I don't know what to feed them. That's just how it is. And so as Black people, as African immigrants, as people of the African diaspora, we need to make a more bold attempt to address the systemic issues that we all face together to ensure that we're bringing everybody to the table. And in doing that, you'll see more leaders rise up because, to TK's point, I don't have the issue of sustainability clouding me from addressing the needs of fixing the system at large. And I hope that answered the question. If not, I will take my comments to myself and listen more intently.
Jessyka, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, kind of like what Rain said. I don't know if I'm about to answer the question, but based on what everyone is saying, part of me wonders if in the Black community, everything that encompasses, maybe we're hard on ourselves. And I get it. I think that it's necessary, like that's how we've gotten where we are, right? That's how we have the leaders that we have. But I was looking at someone's comment earlier about Beyonce, and I was trying to think, like, who would be the white equivalent of Beyonce? And I don't think that there is one. And what I mean by that is like a white woman whose life is scrutinized in every way, right? Like politically, socially, financially, appearance, everything is scrutinized about Beyonce at all times. Like, she's this pinnacle, and not just as an American, but I think she has become this global symbol of what it means to be a Black woman, right? Okay. So I get nervous when we talk about, well, I guess I just get a little sad when we encourage each other to go into politics. Not because I don't think we should be there. Obviously we should. But I think that as Black people, we've always had this standard for ourselves and for each other that is much higher than anyone else. And I wonder, where's the room for creativity, right? Like, what does it mean to be a Black politician? What does it mean to be a Black activist? Can that mean more than one thing? Like, so all that to get to my version of an answer to this question. I think when I think of like, go out there, be great, that definition is kind of changing for me. Like, what have you been naturally gifted with? What do you have that for you comes easily? And other people tell you all the time how good you are at that thing, but you say, no, I'm not good. It just like, everybody can do that. No. If it feels like this is something everyone can do, that is a unique talent to you. How can you use that thing to love and support people who are typically ignored? And that might look like creating art, and art is activism, right? That might look like speaking with people who don't normally get talked to about politics, right? I guess I'm just saying, I think as Black people, we get pigeonholed. Like, this is the way we've always done this, so this is the way we're gonna keep doing it. No, there's gotta be freedom. There's gotta be room to do it differently. So that's all.
Yeah, I think that's very important to your point. That's part of what Kemi and I wanted to do through dance, right? And through visual media is like taking that step back to influence in a way that you uniquely know how.
I was gonna also add something. I think it's also very important to note that resistance comes in a multitude of forms. Just to add on to what Jessyka said, like, you don't have to be a politician. You don't have to be, a lawyer, or in the African American community, what is it? Engineer, lawyer, and doctor. Like, that's our top three choices. It's like a running joke. But you can also resist in a myriad of different ways. We have to remember that a lot of these social issues are very complex, and they have many, many factors that are feeding into them. And it's not one particular solution that's actually going to fix it. It's probably a multitude of solutions coming from different forms, attacking each factor as they come. So I think it's really important for us as Black people to also be very forgiving of everybody, which is kind of a part of the reason why we're having this conversation, is not just understanding community on a community level, but also understanding on an individual level, what is this person's strengths and weaknesses, where can they shine the most, and how do they contribute to our collective progress in their moment of strength. Not everybody is going to be able to go out and protest. Not everybody's going to be able to go out and post. Where can we all in our own spheres of influence make a difference in the way that we feel the most comfortable, if that makes sense. So,
Rain, you wanted to say something?
I want to apologize if I came off as trying to pigeonhole anybody into politics. That's just kind of where my brain is right now. So if you can do it, because we need to get the old people out. Forgive me, that's my crudeness coming off. But I did want to ask, because it's so, from the music sphere that I've come from, I've actually made a couple of attempts to try to get some musicians and artists to become activated into using their music for activism, to speak against certain things. And it's very apathetic in certain circles. So from your experience, what are some things you've done to galvanize creatives to use their voice to speak truth to power in certain arenas, rather than feeling like, oh, well, all I do is spit a few bars here or there. That's not going to really change nothing. How would you galvanize somebody like that to use their art to speak truth to power?
I feel like there's some creatives on this panel already that can kind of speak from their own experiences. But I think the way that I was thinking about going this is also kind of similar to what TK was talking about earlier. It's like, when your first primary like focus is to eat, right? And from the creative perspective, I feel like a lot of us were very jaded with the way that we're treated in general. And so it's like, if I'm not even treated or given the respect as a creative in the first place, who are you to ask me to do anything else outside of what, you know, is comfortable to me. So I think in this conversation of trying to encourage people to be more activated, number one, we have to actually listen to the artists and listen to the creatives and be like, okay, hey, what are you passionate about? Because every single Black person, as far as I'm concerned, has some aspect of themselves that feels what it, like, we understand what it feels like to be Black, and we don't I'm pretty sure, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure all of us don't really like, you know, the state of where we are in the moment, right? And so there is a part of that experience that we're all passionate about. But if you're coming to talk to a creative and you're like, okay, hey, I want you to do these things, it's like, first of all, you need to respect me as an artist, and you have to see my value as an artist. That's not just in conversation, that's how I'm compensated. That's how, do you give me the space to actually create my art? Do you give me the time? Do you give me the resources? If I need help in doing the thing that you've asked me to do, have you provided that help to me, so that all I can do is actually focus on the creative process? And I think interference is just kind of like the first aspect. Like it's very much, in a lot of ways, it's like a trial error. We didn't get everything right, but that was like our main focus. Whereas like we had 13 creatives on this project, and every single one of them in their own way, through the hair with Lucci, or the makeup with Nicole, or the costume designs with Lid Rock, every single one of them thought very, very specifically about their perspectives, you know, as Black people, as African immigrants, or, you know, and they used their art to tell their story, right? That's why this piece is so powerful. And that's why you said there's a lot of Easter eggs, because every single creative brought their perspective through the art that they portrayed in the piece. That's why it's so powerful. So I think, to answer your question, it's all about, first of all, fundamentally respecting the artist, and then actually giving them a space and an environment where they can actually create and do the work. A lot of like musicians or whatever, they may say, oh, I spit a few bars, but they're thinking, I have to do 3 or 4 gigs this week just to put bread on the table. They're not even thinking about in that realm. You know what I mean? And again, I can't speak for everyone, because my experience as a creative is also very different from everybody else. We're all very unique. But I think you need to tackle the fundamental needs of that creative first, before you can ask them to actually speak out on any of these issues.
Yeah. Yeah, to that point, being intentional. I know Kemi and I, that was a big thing that we wanted coming into this project, right? We wanted that every creative who is working on the project comes in with that mindset, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and how can I use my art form to influence that, right? You know, how can I use my makeup to show these little nuances in this message? How can I use the costumes to portray the differences within the communities? You know, and I think, like Kimmy said, obviously you have to tackle those first barriers, right? But once you are past that point, encouraging the creative to be very intentional in every aspect, right? And that doesn't have to be something that is super deep. That could be a few lines in a song, you know, and like you said earlier, like Easter eggs throughout the video, pointing to specific things, you know, that their fans can catch and talk about in the comments, and that can keep the conversation going after, you know, the song is heard, the movie is watched, etc. Yeah, TK, what are your thoughts? How can we as a Black community continue tackling these issues? How can we get out there, civically participate? What are some other ways that we can engage?
I think the first thing that we can do is own our individuality and the power that we have in our day-to-day existence, and start operating from a place of love and openness. Which I don't necessarily see a lot in our community. And I'll give you an example. Like a lot of times if I go to the corner store, I see another Black man, there's this tension, this mean mug, this self-hate that comes off. And I think that in order for us to even delve into politics or anything else, we have to have a collective, if not agenda, understanding that we are operating as one community, one Black community, whether we from Haiti, Nigeria, Sunnyside, South Park. Like, Black people have to figure out what our priorities are as a community, understanding that when we go into certain spaces, as soon as you start saying Black, it's going to get co-opted. It's going to, and so we have to be very solid with our demands, with our expectations, and with how we interact and govern ourselves in our community. We shouldn't necessarily need police because we should have certain order in our community based on our respect. You know, it's basically bringing the village back to me. And I've never seen this village model, but I do have an idea of what it could be like. The other thing I want to say is that, in my opinion, I feel like art is the highest science, and it has been marginalized to entertainment thing. And it's more than entertainment. Art inspires everything. You know what I mean? And so now you have artists, writers, poets, dancers who are, instead of them saying, let me make the art because I love the art, because I want to leave something behind, they saying, well, if I paint this picture the way that make the people happy, then I can make some money. And as long as people are driven by money, I don't think they'll find the full fulfillment out of creating art. You know what I mean? And now let me be clear. You have to find a way to eat, but I don't think that your art, I believe your art will produce revenue in due time, but I don't think you should make art necessarily just because you're looking to make money. I think that if right now, if Black people said we're going to boycott our contribution as artists to this system, I think the world would shut down. I don't think anybody would know what to do if Black people stop making art, even the most ratchet art. The whole economic system would break apart.
Yeah. To your point, I know that's, I think that's a good place to segue to the next topic. You know, I think Kemi and I, we were discussing earlier, and I think it was Lovey, you said, one famous influencer that was talking about the influence that like capitalism has in just in general, you know. And I think the question that she asked was, what do you do when you're not considered a priority, right? And when you're only helped when there is an economic or capitalist incentive to helping you, right? And so we were talking about it, and we discussed, you know, the NSARS perspective. That is something that there is a capitalist, like, I guess the opposite of incentive, right? The leaders in Nigeria do not have an incentive to end police brutality. Why? Because it keeps the population under control, allows them to silo money into their pockets, right? But on the flip side, you also have the, the Black Lives Matter movement, which has, like you mentioned, TK, kind of been co-opted into a marketing ploy that many companies are using as a capitalist incentive, right? And okay, we put this out there, we show that we support, you know, we keep the people happy, we show that we're like civically engaged, that we're, you know, that we're active, that we're socially aware, right? So how do you fight back in a world where if you're not a priority and if there isn't an economic incentive to helping you, then nobody comes or says or does anything? I guess that's the next question for our panelists. We'll start with Jessyka.
This question has been burning my mind lately. Like, I was thinking about the men who get to be greats, right? Like Galileo, all these men who like at all times were artists and thinkers and philosophers. And in other words, they didn't have to choose one thing. They didn't have to choose one lane. They were these complete humans because they had the freedom to think, right? And I think American capitalism destroys that. Like, I think we ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not like, what do you want to do for money while you're also a full-fledged human, right? Like, we make what we do who we are, and that is nonsense, first of all. Second of all, no wonder, right? Like, no wonder we're so unsatisfied with our jobs, and no wonder once we make it, people fall out because it's nothing, it's vapid, it's empty, right? Like there is no meaning, there's no substance in work. not more than the human spirit, right? Okay, that might be a lot. What I'm getting at is capitalism undermines who we are as people and drops our value down to the amount of money that we make. And that's insane, first of all. Second of all, I think that's why, like, I completely agree with what TK said. Like, if you were to remove Black art, this country wouldn't know how to function, because we make it seem like it's this one singular thing, right? Like, we just make it seem like it's entertainment, but it's not. Black people have always been, in addition with our other brothers and sisters, part of the fabric and the soul of this country. You can't monetize that, but we try. And by trying to monetize it, we make it so little. We think it's just entertainment. No. So I could talk about this and think about this forever. Like the intrinsic value of humans versus the value that we put on humans in a capitalist society, and who knows more about that than the Black American? Okay, so.
Rain, it seems as if you have something to say.
Muting myself would control me and making my facial reactions, but clearly it doesn't. I would just say it's kind of hard to answer this question, because as the little rebellious person that I am, my first intention just for myself is to say, oh, well, if you pander to me, I'm still not going to purchase from you. I'm still not going to buy from you until I see some systemic change. One of the first things I said with Nickelodeon and with Nike when they first did their promo to say that they stood with Black lives and things of that nature, it's like, okay, but what about your board of directors? What is the percentage of your stockholders? What are you actually doing to show that you are in support of Black lives actually mattering? What are you doing other than, now, although this is great, but what are you doing other than, you know, keeping Colin Kaepernick paid with endorsements, keeping one Black man and a few other Black athletic players paid to continue to say this message so long as your logo is on it? That's kind of where my mind goes in terms of this. And I think that as a collective, we are all aware of the buying power of Black people. We are all very aware of the power of our vote. We are told this every cycle that it's time to go shopping or it's time to go vote. We are fully aware of the authority we have as a Black people. But once we get to that organizing section of saying, okay, we're going to pull our dollars until you show us Black lives actually matter. We're going to pull our vote until you actually show us that you are representing our agenda. Once we get to that unifying, and it itches my spirit so, because I don't know another way to describe it, because I really feel that as a people, we are on the precipice of that actually happening. And it's just, because I've heard it so often when I was younger that, oh, we need a Black agenda. Oh, we need to have a unified effort. Oh, we need to just have our own little town, our own little this. But you see so many more cities now reviving Black Wall Streets in their own neighborhoods. You see so many people pushing for the Black dollar being kept in Black communities. You're starting to see that convergence of that idea into one whole, and it, like I said, it itches my spirit because it's so close, but it's still not close enough. And I feel strongly in saying that if we as a people truly understood the value of our dollar, the value of our sweat equity, as well as the value of our vote, if we were under the same flag and banner and knew that we were only being profited on through capitalist or economic gain, then we would have the authority as a people to say, okay, they're only pandering. Let's see how serious they are. Let's hold our vote, or let's hold our money until they do right by us. Let's evaluate their level of engagement with the Black movement through a set agenda that we as a collective body have said, this is what is important to us. This is what we need to be sustainable. This is what we need to have our communities thrive. This is what we need to help our communities and our Black boys and Black girls from staying out of the school to pipeline prison system. This is what we need. If you haven't addressed any of these 5 things, then okay, the logo is nice, but we're still not going to buy from you. And if we had that discipline, if we had that unity, I think that's where this question can be answered and say that's our response. Because for me personally, I'm petty. If I see that you're only just putting up a logo, I'm just not, I don't like spending money anyway. So I'm going to keep my $2 in my pocket and call it a day. But if we adopted that as a community, I feel like we would actually see substantial change.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. And with that, we want to open it up to the audience as well. We want you guys' thoughts. We want you guys' perspectives. Feel free to unmute yourselves and join the conversation. I know to answer one of the questions, I think the way that I tackle it personally, in trying to spread these issues and awareness to people is just from a person-to-person perspective, always be willing to give grace. I think that's, for me, as somebody, just a little background, I want to go on and become a clinical psychologist, a therapist. But meanwhile, I am working on doing industrial organizational psychology, basically psychology within the business sphere, developing organizations and stuff like that. And I think the way that I tackle it is in these spaces where you're often surrounded by people that don't look like you, be willing to give some grace, right? Some people are going to say things that will be off. People are going to say things that isn't necessarily kosher. And I think the way that I approach them is to just ask questions, right? Engage them and let them talk and then show them a different perspective, right? I think too often as Black people, because we're in our social media silos and we're constantly posting, we go through this misconception that what everybody sees is the same thing that we see. And it kind of throws me back to this TED Talk that I saw, basically a Black guy who infiltrated the KKK by just realigning his entire social media, following all those types of pages and following those influencers in that space and realizing that what they see is radically different from what we see, right? And so being constantly exposed to this, we tend to tire ourselves out to where it's like, why should I even want to talk about this with you? You should know what's going on. It's all over social media. But we have to remember that it's all over our social media, right? And being willing to allow people to make those mistakes and, as you talk to them, expose perspectives. It reminds me of the story of, I forgot his name, but he is a Black man who has gone out there and personally converted hundreds of KKK members. And he told the story of the first time he did it. It was just a simple conversation, here's what I think about you, right? I think that the Black man is just inherently violent. Oh, really? Why do you think that? And then the KKK member answered, and then he was like, okay, so then if you say that, then I think that the white man has an inherent gene that causes them to do serial killings, right? And he tackled it from the perspective of serial killings and how it's mostly white people that we see in the news that do that. And then the KKK members sat there and thought for a while and couldn't come up with a answer. And then from there, it was like a few weeks later, the KKK member came back to him and gave him his hat. And that was a really profound question that you asked me, right? And I think I say that story just to go to show the power of just talking, being able to approach the other side and get people to talk and give them that grace to share their perspective and also share yours with them.
I would add to a slightly different perspective on this. So as much as I do, because personally from my experience, I've always been in an environment where I'm either the only Black person or just one of a few. And I feel like that's a conversation that's always been taken, put on our shoulders. Yes, we need to tell them and let them know. But I also think that more important focus right now for a lot of Black people is that we need to kind of turn inward and focus on building our communities. And also in that same space, because we do have a sense of influence in the areas that we are in, there needs to be, yes, there is a level of grace, but there also has to be a level of boundary and respect, right? For example, at the company that I work with, I no longer code switch as much as I used to when I was in high school, because it sends this message that, you know, everything that's Eurocentric has to be me. But if I'm being 100% myself, I'm going to the office with a head wrap, I'm speaking in an accent because I naturally do have an accent. I am also unconsciously teaching these people that there is a uniqueness to who I am, and that does not detract from my ability or detract from my intelligence. So it's not always, you know, communitying or babying other, other ethnicities or other races that don't necessarily, you know, relate to the Black experience. It's more of just being Black and being proud, and not being willing to sugar that down or water that down for anybody. Um, but then the other aspect that I think that we should also kind of turn in and focus on is, clearly, I mean, we've seen a CNN interview that happened during the whole NSARS protest, when somebody literally went on CNN and said that the NSARS movement is not a priority. I believe he said that for the US. So when you hear that and you're trying to communicate with a group that does not relate to your struggles, and they are telling you, hey, this is not a priority. I'm either going to use this as a marketing cop out, or I'm going to use this because I pity you, or I use this because I have a principle that I want to feel, or I want to look like a good person. Their level of attachment to this conversation is very, very different than us as Black people who actually live it. So we actually need to focus on, hey, okay, what do we need to do as Black people to, you know, focus on self-sustenance? And that's kind of going to be the next question that I'm going to ask everybody. Now it's like, what are the tips that you have to help the people in your community be more sustainable, either individually or as a community? We've already talked about policing ourselves, but what is the first step that we all need to take in creating a system where we prioritize ourselves and we can create, like, solve our own solutions? Let's start with TK.
My opinion is that, you find a way to sustain yourself through whatever is comfortable for you. You know, I'm not going to say you work wherever you want to work. You need to find a way to sustain yourself, in my opinion. Save money, get your credit together, because, you would like to participate in this game when you get ready to buy real estate. Stabilize yourself to the extent that you can, and in the spaces that you can, and people receive what you have. Break bread with folks. When I say break bread, I mean build with individuals, and then protect your energy. You know what I mean? As much as I love Black people from all walks of life, I'm still aware that all, what they say, skin folk ain't my kinfolk. And if you are not on the same path, and you refuse to, if you want to stay where you are, then I'm gonna leave you right where you are. But I'm always have that olive branch if you ever decide to, you want to have a conversation. But I mean, I think and I'm gonna leave it at this. I don't know how true this was. I feel like I saw it in a documentary about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And if I'm correct, neither one of them really had like life insurance policies. And so when they died, their families were left at a disadvantage. And so when I realized that, and I was looking at the work I was doing, especially being out at these protests, seeing people with these V for Vendetta masks on and these little briefcases in their hand, I don't know what's going to happen at any given time. So that kind of shifted my thinking and saying, let me get my life together so that if I was to leave prematurely, my life has a value that can sustain everything that I have to take care of in real time, my responsibility. So that's how I organize my life. Get a life insurance policy. Those are my priorities, get my household in order. So that's my thoughts on that.
I don't know. I don't know if we still going, man. I apologize for my tardiness. I wanted to comment if it's cool. Can I do that? I literally just jumped in here. Can y'all hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Oh, yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, again, I apologize for my tardiness. My name's AJ McQueen. I caught the back end of the whole conversation, and I think it's dope. You know what I mean? I really do. I think it's dope. I wish I would have caught everything. But I'll just say this real quick. I'm an artist. I'm an activist. I'm an entrepreneur. You know, and I've been out here for a long time. You heard me from St. Louis, Missouri. I live here in Houston, and you know, from the artist standpoint and the entrepreneur standpoint, my heart. I started off. I made a nonprofit first, right? And so I always realized that you fight systems with systems. Like we create systems, you know, and like everything is systematic. Racism, you know, injustice, all these things are systematic. It's not an individualistic thing. And as an activist, when I used to go out to the marches, to the rallies, I mean, I've been frontline for everything that you can think of. You know what I'm saying? From Trayvon to Mike Brown to Sandra Bland, all that. And I realized that I always left defeated, you know, because I didn't see no change in what I was doing. And then I realized that true change is not individualistic. You know, it's systematic. It has to be, it has to come from all different angles. So that's what led me to create a nonprofit, you know, and so we've been doing a lot of work in the hood, in our neighborhoods through the nonprofit. Then I created a water company, Hydrate Hill Water. And through these different, along with my music, through these different systems, I finally now start feeling and seeing change from my perspective because of the systems. And so, you know, for everybody who, you know, who may feel like, you know, that change is really not happening or whatever, like I'm a person, I'm very militant. Don't get me wrong. I'm very straightforward in my approach, but I do believe that we just have to create systems, and a system is something that continues to evolve. You know, when we go into these communities, when we're speaking about change, but we leave them with nothing, you know, we're actually doing more harm than good. And activists raises their fist while the advocate lends their hand, right? So they both go together, you know what I'm saying? And whether you lending your hand or raising your fist, you know, we all need, we need to approach it from all angles. Like I just saw the thing that's happening in Philly right now. I didn't even watch the video because I don't want to watch the video. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel like they carrying the energy this morning, but we just saw, you know, it's another Black person that's dead. So as creatives, I think that what we can continue to do is continue to build systems, you know, and some of us may not be the front person, but if you have the ability to advocate and to be an advocate for another system, then you go take your gift to that system and help that system grow. But I think that's how we continue to spread. That's how we continue to, you know, track our growth. You know, I've been in this for a long time, and I choose to stay grassroots. You know what I'm saying? Because grassroots change is real change. You know, once it gets out of your hands, I believe that it's hard to manage. But I just want to encourage everybody on here. You know what I'm saying? Again, I caught the back end. I apologize, but I just want to encourage everybody on here as creatives, as individuals, as Black folk, as melanated folk to continue to create and evolve. And you know, somebody said something about artists and stuff. I am an artist. If you ever looking for music that's really about the people, really about the soul, check out my music because yeah, I rap about it. You know what I'm saying? But that's all I'll say because I won't take no more time. But yeah, keep doing your thing. Cool.
I think in the chat box, Nana had something to say, or Rain, you also had something to say.
I'm only saying this because I think I mentioned it in the private chat. Unfortunately, I do have to leave. But what I did leave with Kalichi is a link to a Get Out the Vote trunk or treat that I'm hosting with another nonprofit organization. And so if anybody wants to participate in that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'll leave my contact information in the chat so that way you can learn more about that. We really do need trunks for the trunk or treat. There's a $100 gift card for the best decorated trunk for that event. So if you're up for it, I will send that information. Like I said, Kalichi has the link, but I will send my information in the chat. Thank you guys for having me. And I am going to mute now. Bye.
Also, to add to that, we are here at the Moments Project with interference, we are pulling together resources on how people can help and get involved in a bunch of the different issues that affect either the Black American or the African immigrant communities. So this is an open out for any of the panelists. If you guys have any information or resources that you would like to share, you can share that with us, and we will share that with everybody through our platforms and pages. And then for people who are listening in, if you're also interested in getting access to, I mean, we're putting it on our pages, but if you'd like a closer English, if you'd like to get more direct access to those resources, it will probably be available on our website, and you can also share your emails with us at the end, so that we can also share that with you directly. But yes, moving on to Nana. Nana, I believe she had something to say about the Black community. Nana, would you like to speak?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I hope everyone's doing good right now. So I just wanted to speak on the Black community. I wanted to share my experiences. First off, I am from Ghana. So I was born in the United States and I've never lived in Ghana, but my family is from Ghana. So basically growing up, I was made fun of for being African and just like other Africans. But I just feel like at this point, I feel like we just all need to unite, because I feel like it was based off ignorance. Because I talked to other Black Americans and, they didn't really know about Africa. And they told me that's why they were making fun of other Africans, because they didn't know any better. So I just feel like the Black community is so divided, and I feel like we just all need to unite. At the end of the day, we're all Black, and like previously said, the cop isn't gonna know that you're African. The cop is gonna see a Black person, and that's how they're gonna respond. The cop is not gonna know if you're from Ghana, Nigeria, Congo. You're Black at the end of the day, and I feel like we just need to stop. We're the only community who does this. I haven't seen any other community who fights with each other about stuff like this. Every day on Twitter, there's, even with the End SARS movement, I saw so many Black Americans saying, okay, but Africans don't like us. Why would we fight for them? Black Lives Matter is for every Black person, not just Black Americans. And I feel like that's what people don't understand. Black Lives Matter is for every single Black person, whether you're a Black American, whether you're a Black African, whether you're a Black Caribbean or whatever. I just feel like we all need to unite and just stop this, because we're just hurting ourselves at the end of the day. Even white people are commenting why are Africans and Black Americans fighting? I would see that on Twitter. I just feel like at this point it's embarrassing. We should not be fighting each other. I feel like we just all need to unite and just stop this.
Yeah, to your point, that's part of what we wanted to elicit from the Interference Project, to address those issues, and more than address them, understand and speak to why they occurred, the media indoctrination, the radio indoctrination, and get people on both sides to realize that unity is ultimately what needs to happen for the community as a collective to move forward. Thoughts from the audience?
Can I share something real quick?
Yes, free. Yeah,
okay, so before we got out, I just wanted to take an opportunity to drop something in the chat. Again, I work for the Texas Organizing Project. We organize in Black and Latino communities around criminal justice and immigration. And so unfortunately, we've been having a very challenging time actually getting African immigrants, Black immigrants to get involved, because immigration, as it's presented in mainstream media, is primarily a Mexico thing. And so it would be great if some of you all pop in. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
My computer's acting up. So, but it would be great if you all could like stop in. I'm having a meeting next Friday. It's an all black meeting, all black space. If some folks could come in and just continue this conversation with us, because again, for me, it is about organizing, and then we do issue-based campaigns, and we connect it to policy. We get people in office, but of course, we know we're not picking our friends, we're picking our targets, Democrat or Republican. You got to keep pushing. And so I'm not too big on politicians myself. You know, I really do think it's all about people having an objective and pushing for that objective collectively. So I think it's Miss Nana. You're more than welcome to come. I would love to continue this conversation with you.
So did you drop the link already?
I did.
Okay, I'll come. When did you say it was?
It's on the 6th, next Friday.
Okay, I'll definitely be there.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So we have 7 minutes left. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask, because the whole point of this conversation is to encourage people to actually be, motivated to actually get out there and vote so that we move forward. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the two panelists that are on there, and then we're going to open it up to anybody else. What are the main tips or what the most important things that both communities need to understand about voting in general and about this election, so that when they go out there, they are, well aware of, what's at stake and what they need to be thinking about when they actually go to the polls.
I think one thing that is like direly important for my area of the law, and that it's not just for lawyers, right? Like judges are on the ballot in Texas. So, okay, hold on, let me backtrack. First, primaries, please vote in not just the general election, right? Like there are elections happening pretty often, pretty frequently. And I think that's the fun stuff, right? That's when you get to see like, what does this person actually stand for? Now, especially with the presidential election, it feels like, which side are you on? But in those earlier elections, you really get to say, what is this person about? Especially if it's a local election, those people will be out, they'll be campaigning. You can go have a conversation with those people. So I think now where I stand in 2020 is treat voting as if it's for you, right? Like it's not something that's for older people to do. It's not for the rich. Like this is an American right. This is yours. So do with it, treat it right. Okay, now back to that more specific point. I know a lot of people, especially when they get to this point, just believe in straight party voting. I'm not gonna tell you how to vote, but I will tell you that there are more on the ballots than just parties, right? So for example, something that really affects my career specifically are the judges on the ballots. Go look up the judges, because at the end of the day, that affects your life too. These people make really big decisions. It affects my life a little bit more closely because I have to go see them. But they make decisions that impact Harris County. So that would be my tip.
Hello, I'm sorry. Can I say something real quick? Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I really agree with what you said about how we need to vote in runoffs too, because I'm 18 and I voted in July at the primary runoffs, and I feel like, and I told my family like I'm going to go vote, and they were like what do you mean, like for president? And I feel like a lot of people are unaware of like certain positions, and they just think of president. And I feel like we all need to like educate people on, there's more than just president, and we need to like stress the importance of voting in local elections, and also voting in our communities, voting like for our representatives,
Like, these people are representing us in Congress. So we need to I feel like we need to care about our own community before we care about the president, because these are the people who we can actually make change in our own community than the president. Like, the president, yes, he's important, but I feel like our own community is more important than the president. And like, I know some people might disagree with that, but I feel like that's what we need to be focusing on.
Thank you so much, Nana. That's really important. Yes, we really do need to focus on our communities, and we do have to realize that there's more on the ballot than just the two at the top. So thank you so much for that word of advice. Tika, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I would just encourage everybody to stay as informed as possible year round. Just get as much information as you can, like Sister Jessyka said. Look into the individuals, see what their policies are, their platforms, what they stand for, do a little research. And then as far as this upcoming election right now, I'm an organizer, so I'm going to encourage everybody on this call to find 9 other people to take with them to go vote, and that's 170 votes. So, you know, we can all mobilize folks within our community. So get a plan to vote, get 9 other people to go, and you'll be surprised there are races that are won by 2 or 3 votes. Not often, but sometimes.
Mm-hmm. To that end, we know there's only a minute left, but just some ideas to wrap up. I know Kemi and I, in organizing marketing for the project and everything, we actually learned that there are some states in which you can actually vote despite having gone to jail or been incarcerated. And I think that's a big thing in our community, considering, you know, the prison industrial complex and how hard that affects Black people specifically. If there are any hesitations that, you know, a friend or loved one may have concerning voting, just look it up real quick. You might be surprised your state might have the same type of rules where you can go out there and vote, you know. I know Nneka actually gave us a resource earlier, that app called Outvote, where it can go through your contacts and let you look at who's voted and allow you to send them a message, like reminding them to go out and go vote. Ultimately, we want to encourage civic participation at all levels, specifically, like Nana said, the local levels, because that's what really impacts us. And Kemi?
And I have one more thing, and I'm gonna be quiet for real, to the point about the background. Sorry, Kimmy. So just in case, I have a felony and a misdemeanor. You can go vote as long as you're not on parole or probation. So I've lived the research, and I know you can go vote. So if you have friends or family who think they can't, they can go vote.
All right.
I do want to say last thing before we wrap this up. Like I said, again, we are from the Interference Project. We are going to be sharing on our page. We are already sharing tips about voting, information about voting that could probably quell a lot of this information. And we will be sending out a resource with a lot of what's been shared today and more, which can be helpful for you guys. So if you go follow at OGCreatives, the page, or the Instagram page, and you click on the link, there's going to be a resource. Once it's updated, there will be a resource that you can click on that can give you a lot of information about voting, and also more links that you can learn more. But yes, you can definitely vote if you have a felony, as long as you're not on parole or probation. And that is, I think, it, y'all. Thank you guys so much for joining the conversation. It was a pleasure to learn from all of you and to share. Again, their information is going to be shared at the end of the panel within the next few days. So we ask that if you're just joining us for the first time, that you will follow the page and so you can getting more information about voting or the project or anything else that any of us are working on. So I just want to say thank you so much to all our panelists. Thank you to TK. Thank you to Jessyka. Thank you to Rain and Nneka. Thank you to our partners, TXSU SU ASA, Rice University ASA, UH ASA, AfriPac, and the Alliance for even helping us host this. Thank you so much to Houston in Action and Art to Action for even supporting the entire project from the get-go. We appreciate every single one of you and the ability to even make this a reality, because this is a conversation that really needs to be had, and more so needs to be had. I believe a few people said that they wanted to continue this conversation. So we'll see what we can do, and we'll send more information if there is a part 2, maybe. But if not, I say adieu. Thank you to everyone. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you so much for this panel.